Hopefully, the sound is good. I'm not doing much to support this. Just gonna rant a minute. What happened to me getting off the elevator was kind of a interesting thing in my head, and I wanted to kind of share that. Part of like my lifestyle and traveling so much is I don't have that memory. I don't know the word for it. I guess innate memory. I don't get out of bed and know I am 5 steps, turn, 2 steps, turn, 3 steps, turn, and I'm at the refrigerator. That middle of the night memory. That's the phrase I want. I don't have that middle of the night memory. And I don't even have that like daily memory, right? So a lot of times, I'll step outside if say I'm in this hotel room, I'll step into the hall and I'll look left and right, but kind of as a matter of habit, but also to make sure I know where I'm going. And so it was really strange. I got off the elevator, and before I left the elevator, I knew like just the background memory, that midnight memory just kicked in, and I knew exactly where I was walking. I could almost close my eyes at that point and walk to the door. Now, I've only been here a few days, but that's a strange, like, combination of muscle memory and familiarity with your environment that is uncommon when I travel so much. And it's really struck me on a deeper level is that when you are traveling a lot, your level of attention to things goes up so much higher. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate that traveling so much. You're always thinking, okay, where's the next ATM? Where's the next this? Where's the next that? And it's not so much, that comfortability that you have in your everyday life kind of evaporates. And for a while, that's exciting, but it also increases that level of stress, that level of, you know, subtly increases that level of stress and anxiety and, uncertainty. And I don't know how healthy that is over time, but I do know it affects, it can be one of those straws on the camel's back and affect your daily life if you let it. So it's just kind of strange to me. Like, I've had that a few times, but there's been other times, like I've been in Airbnbs where I never developed that I'm 6 steps to the bathroom memory, that midnight memory. And so I kind of wonder, why, when I have things like today, I kind of wonder why some places it develops so quickly and some places it doesn't. Like, what can I do to enhance that? What can I do to what what actions do I do that makes that um, take longer to develop? But anyway, it was just some thoughts going through my head, and it is strange. Like, I remember getting off the train in Tokyo. My first time in Yokohama was so hard because I'm trying to figure out how to get to the hotel, and I'm looking around, and like every 5 steps I'm looking like this, and I'm looking up at the signs. And I got lost a few times, just because I didn't follow the map. It was just so, like, I knew I need to go from here to there. I was just trying to navigate. So, you know I went back, I don't know, 6 8 months later, and it was so funny because even the platform, like where I got off on the train, even like where I got off, I knew to walk to that ramp and down that ramp, and I just walked right through, and everything was just a totally different level of relaxed, knowing exactly where I needed to go. I didn't need to search for any signs. I didn't need to search for this. I knew how the flow pattern of the all the other pedestrians was, get to this side at this part and then move over, just to make walking smoother. And, you kind of learn the traffic patterns, even the pedestrian traffic patterns. And so it was just kind of that strange moment, like a feeling of like I'm home and a feeling of like, someplace familiar when it's really neither to me. But it did strike me as odd, like just kind of subconsciously, coming up. I just walked out of the elevator and, instantly, I was at my door to the, hotel room without even really thinking about it, without even like looking for, numbers, making sure I'm going the right way. And hotels, they all look the same for a reason. They're all like it's all, you know, it's all the same, right? It's like a casino. It's easy to get lost in a hotel. Um, and so, anyway, I just thought that was funny. And it's interesting that, I don't see other people talk about little issues like this, being a nomad, being a chronic traveler, that, or being an expat, that the little straws of hay, they just keep piling up on the camel's back. And these, this is one of those, is that feeling of comfortability and, knowing the environment and, knowing, I don't know, it's just interesting. Local traffic patterns, things like that. And it gets, the more you travel, the more it gets, you know, extreme. Like, okay, where am I going to find an ATM? What ATMs work? Where am I going to find a bathroom? Where can I find food in a hurry? Where can I, and these are all things, they don't seem like a big deal until you're got $2 in your pocket and, you're like, I need to eat, right? I need some money, and I watched that happen to some other people. I was on, uh, I was in El Nido. I was gonna say on an island, El Nido. It's not an island, but I was in El Nido, and something happened with the power and then the ATMs. The internet was down for like 2 days beyond that. Wasn't a typical or planned brownout, but there was some problem, and so none of the ATMs worked for like 3 or 4 days, and people were running out of money. And tourists, they had no other ways to get money, especially out in a remote place. It's either an ATM or you're stuck if you don't bring it with you. And so, watching that stress happen to other people, was difficult. But at the same time, it reminded me, and for a long time, I wouldn't go anywhere without a bottle of water or, without this or without that. A little over prepared, but it also drives, back to this whole concept of, you know, it's easy when there's a 7-Eleven right there, or this or that, right? It's easy to get around and navigate. But, when you don't know the area or the environment or anything, it gets a little more difficult. And even in Poland, like, I was staying in this one neighborhood in Krakow, and I didn't know that, like, I'm walking by these buildings, and I didn't know that they're restaurants and, bars and things, and they just look like old buildings. No real signage out front, no nothing. And then you go inside, and it's this cozy little, bar or restaurant, and it was just the funniest thing. So, you know, but I don't know. That midnight memory, what do you think? How long does it take you to develop that? Get out of bed in the middle of the night and you can walk around the room without any lights. You know, it's interesting. It's interesting. Anyway, just wanted to get that thought out of my head and talk to my personal therapy device. So I hope you all have a great day. I'm gonna go grab some fresh air. I think I'm gonna skip the coffee and go for some fresh air. Take care.